Okay. So this is a 3-part message, and I know some people are here for the first time tonight, but that's fine because I'm going to actually recap some of the stuff that we talked about in the last couple messages for the message today. This message, the title is called Mercy. Our first song that we got tonight was Mercy. God gave me that song for this message, and we'll get into that mercy part a little later. But we're going to get right in. So we were talking about Joseph, and we're in the book of Genesis. Anybody has their Bible? We're in Genesis. It starts with chapter 37 and goes into the end of Genesis. For everyone who's new, we're talking about Joseph. It's a character in the Bible. He's one of the sons of Jacob. So we got Abraham. Abraham had Isaac when he was about 100 years old. Isaac had Jacob. And then Isaac had Jacob and Esau, the twins, but Jacob is who we're talking about. So Jacob's sons are who we're discussing, and he had 12 sons, and Joseph is number 11 of 12. For anybody who is needing the quick catch-up, trying to just fast forward for anybody who's here today for the first time. The first message, a few weeks ago, we were talking about positioning, and today, when I was up this morning and talking to God, He gave me that it was 3 parts. And I always knew it was 3 parts. I just didn't have the 3rd part yet until this morning. So the surface was the first part, and that was positioning. So we talked about what happened to Joseph in his life. So this is the things that are happening to him. His brothers don't really like him. He's almost the baby. There's one more after him. His dad favors him because he prefers his wife, their mom, over his other women that he had children with. And so he kind of favors Joseph. This creates animosity between the siblings. They dislike Joseph. They plot to kill him because they're so upset. They're jealous of him. And so instead of killing him, one of the brothers talks some sense into the other brothers and says, let's not kill him. Let's throw him in this pit. They throw him in the pit. And while he's in the pit, a group of merchants go by and they decide to sell Joseph to the merchants, and he ends up in slavery. So they sell Joseph to the merchants. They take him down to Egypt. And while he's in Egypt, he's sold to Potiphar, which is a second-hand man to the Pharaoh down in Egypt. So now he's in slavery. He's a servant. He has a master. And then from there, he gets lied on by his master's wife. She says that he came on to her, tried to have sex with her, and she lied about it, told her husband. He then is upset and sends Joseph to prison. So Joseph is now in prison. So this is his life. We're just giving you a quick recap of the first message. This is how God positioned him physically, how he got him from point A to B to C to where he was going. And after prison, he gets out of prison because he interprets dreams for a prisoner that is there at the time. And that dream that he interpreted came true. And so when Pharaoh has a dream later on, this guy is like, oh yeah, I met this guy in prison named Joseph. He interpreted my dream. He can probably interpret your dream. So now Joseph gets out of prison. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. And Pharaoh believes everything that he says and puts him in charge of all of Egypt. So he goes through this whole tragic situation and then ends up second in command over all of Egypt. He's as rich as he can be. He has everything that he could ever want, need, desire. And so this is the surface. Part 1 is the surface. So that was the surface, positioning, how God got him physically from one place to another. The second part we talked about was patient endurance. And so God gave me that was his heart. So in patient endurance, we talked about Joseph's character, and this was how Joseph handled his situation throughout this whole process, how he went from point A to point B in his heart. So in his heart, he was always patient, kind, compassionate. He was just this upstanding guy, very humble, very selfless. He follows God the whole way. He trusts that God is guiding him, even when it doesn't look like it. And I believe my first bullet point, if I don't go back just off the top of my tongue, is no matter what it looks like, you're always in the right place at the right time for God's purpose. So that was from the first message. And so Joseph is just all in. Like, he's going with the flow. God is positioning him, and he trusts the whole time in his heart that God is taking him where he's meant to be. So he never questions it. He never doubts it. We hear him multiple times say things about God throughout his whole time in this process. And so now that brings us full circle to today. And so I was asking God, I was like, well, what more is there to Joseph? Like, we talked about his character, and we talked about all the things that happened to him and how he handled it. And he told me that we all needed to have a patient endurance. So we love that. I'm like, okay, cool, patient endurance. Well, today he gave me Joseph's mind. And so this is Joseph's understanding of his situation. So God needed to make Joseph into a great leader. That required time and preparation, right? So he needed to take him through a series of events to prepare him physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. All these things that he's going through are preparing him for greatness, because he needs to be a great leader. And to get someone from a childhood where their siblings pick on them, and he's favored by his father, I'm sure there's some habits that he picked up at the time that just aren't good characteristics in a great leader. And so God took him through these things. And so that is what God was talking to me about this morning, is Joseph's mind. So we see that Joseph's being prepared for greatness. And so I'm going to read exactly how I got it for you. So Joseph's heart needed to be in the right place. His mind needed to be in the right place. And he had to physically be in the right place. All of these things are happening simultaneously in his life over a period of time. So that is what God said to me. And so I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like his heart, mind, and his body all need to be. So we got him physically there, but just because you get somebody physically to a position doesn't mean that they're emotionally and mentally ready to deal with that position that you put them in. So everything that we go through in life is preparation. So we live our life in training, our life in preparation for wherever God is taking us. And so I'm going to break it down a little bit more to Joseph and the things that God tested in him, right? Joseph is continuously being tested on this journey that God has taken him on. And so I'm going to start with, he tested his faith. He also strengthened his faith. That was like the biggest one for me, because the whole time we see Joseph and he never doubts, he never falters. I mean, when they say unshakable, unbreakable faith, I would think of Joseph. Like out of all the people that I've ever heard of, like he just has that faith. God is doing all these things. I mean, he's sold into slavery. He ends up in prison. And still the whole time he is giving glory to God. And he's just like, I'm right where I need to be. And he just handles it so well the whole time. And so I just feel like he definitely has that unbreakable faith. A lot of us, we would start to doubt a little bit. Like, oh, so now I'm in jail. Like, how are you going to take me from jail to this great place that you said you're going to take me? Oh, yeah, sorry. God gave Joseph 2 dreams back when he was still with his family. And they both let him know that his family was going to bow down to him. Those are the only 2 things he had to go on this whole time. But it doesn't really look like your family's going to be bound down to you when you're a slave or a prisoner. But Joseph kept it. He was always steady and always rock solid in his faith and his belief in God. And he prayed and did everything right when it came to faith. The second thing that he tested and strengthened in Joseph is, I want to go in order. Oh yes, his integrity was the second one that he gave me. So Joseph's integrity, right? So in a great leader, we need to have integrity. All leaders should have integrity. You need to be honest and trustworthy, someone dependable and reliable that's not going to just do things when no one's watching or take advantage of their position. And so his integrity is tested. And for his integrity, I want to get into a scripture really quick. I did go over it in the first message. It's Genesis 39, 7 through 10. Genesis 39, 7 through 10. And so it says, Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, Come to bed with me. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. So this is Joseph. He's a man. This woman is coming on to him. It says day after day. Like she didn't do it one time. Day after day after day after day after day. She is trying to sleep with Joseph. She wants him, and she wants him so bad that she later goes ahead and sets this whole thing up where he comes in the house and all the servants are gone. There's no one in the house but her and him, and she kind of corners him, and he runs out of the house away from her. And in the meantime, she snatches his jacket off of him, and this is where the lie happened. So she took the jacket, he ran out of the house, nothing happened, but because she had his cloak, she lied to her husband and said that he came on to her, and when she screamed, he ran out and she grabbed his cloak. So the master believed the lie. But back to Joseph. even then, he says that it's wicked and to sin against God. So we hear him speaking about God. So he is completely faithful with God. He didn't say sin against his master. He's thinking more like above his master. Yes, he's important not to sin against your master as well, but God. He doesn't want to do anything to disobey God, to sin against God, to hurt God. He wants to stay truthful to who he is as a person. So that is his integrity, his honesty, his trustworthiness, and his faithfulness. We see Joseph just being built up in character over this time, because now at this point he's a slave, he's a servant, and yet he's still mindful of these things that he's learned in his childhood about God and what he is supposed to do and not supposed to do. The last thing we kind of see is how he handles positions of power, right? So we know that God has taken him to be a great leader. And I was just like, oh my gosh, yes, that makes so much sense. Like, he has these little mini roles of being a leader, because he becomes a servant. And as a servant, he does such a good job. He's just such this great person that the master elevates him to the top servant, puts him in charge of all the other servants and everything in the house, except, like, he's only beneath the master at this point, and everything else is free to him. And so at this point, he has power. He can do whatever he wants to anybody who's beneath him. If he chose to sleep with the wife, he probably could have done that too if he wanted to. But it just shows how well he's already conditioned into the role of being a great leader, just in that, like, he had power over the servants, yet he still did his work every day. He went out with them. He didn't slack on his job. He helped other people. He's like just great. And then he gets thrown in jail after a lie. And so I was like, okay, well, God is testing his endurance, his patient endurance even more now, because now he gets lied on. He ends up in prison. So how well does he handle this situation? Same way. Now we see Joseph in prison, and in prison again, he's elevated to top prisoner. Everyone else in the prison is just like, Joseph is great. He's in charge of all the other prisoners. Do whatever you want. And even then, he's still, at this point, he's in prison. So when you're in prison, you're amongst criminals. Like, if any place to be judgmental or not nice to people will be in prison, because these people did wrong things to get here, most of them. And still, he doesn't look at anyone differently. He doesn't treat anyone differently. Even with his situation that he's going through, in fact, he notices that two of the prisoners are having a bad day, and he comes over to them and asks what's wrong with them. And these two prisoners end up leading to him getting out of prison in the long run. But he even says, do not interpretations belong to God, when he's speaking to the prisoner. So again, he's still with God in prison. He's still speaking to people about God. And so I'm just like, that's amazing, to go through the life that he went through and end up in prison, yet still give all this glory to God. And she just had such understanding of everything that was happening around him, his tests, his lessons, his positioning, all of that. It seems like he just understood that he was going through this process for a purpose. And then he gets out of prison and he becomes the great leader that he was meant to be. He's exactly where he's meant to be. And when he does get in position of power over Egypt, he has a lot of power. Like, he's in charge of an entire country, and he knows about the feast and the famine. He saves up all this grain and food and prepares during the years of feast, prepares for the 7 years of famine. And so I'm just like, he's a great leader. Like, he's a planner. He makes sure that everybody's well taken care of. He understands that in 7 years, all of this abundance, this overflow is going to be no more. So he makes sure, because people, right, we got an abundance and overflow, we just eat it up. We overindulge on the things that are extra. Joseph made it a point to store everything away so that for those 7 years of famine, everybody would be taken care of. And it wasn't just Egypt that had success because of that, because even the outskirts, the people who lived outside of Egypt, had to come into Egypt to buy food and to trade to get food from Egypt. So he had enough food not only for the country he was in, but also for the surrounding people. And so this brings me to the mercy part of this message. So I was kind of like, okay, God, I see everything that Joseph's doing. Like, he's like the perfect example. I would love to be more like Joseph. I feel like I'm like Joseph, but I can be more like Joseph. How can I be more like Joseph? And so he gave me 2 words, adaptable and mercy. Adaptable. So Joseph is adaptable. And the definition, when I looked it up, is able to be modified for a new use or purpose. So able to be modified for a new use or purpose. Able to be modified for a new use or purpose. And I was just like, absolutely. I think that all of God's children should be adaptable, right? We should be able to be modified and used for a new purpose. If God calls on us and asks us to do something different, we should be obedient and do something different. Be willing to give up what we had to go where God has taken us, and trust that where he's taken us is better than what we had, which is really hard. That's hard to do. It's hard to just walk away from the thing, the comfort and the stability that you have, go into this unknown place, which God has called many people to go to unknown places where they were comfortable and stable, and now they're wandering. They don't know where they're going or where he's taking them, but that's where that faith comes in. And so Joseph is adaptable. The second word was mercy. And so when I looked at the definition of mercy, it's compassion of or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. So that's a long one. But compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. So Joseph is in a position of power at this point. He is running Egypt. He's in a position of power. He can do what he wants, come and go as he pleases. And his brothers have to come down to Egypt to get grain. So these are the same brothers that sold him into slavery and pretty much were the cause of all his suffering that he had to endure while he was in Egypt before he became Pharaoh's second-hand man. And so his brothers come. They don't recognize him. Why should they? They think he's dead, so they don't think anything of it when they see him. But he recognizes them. And so he sees them, and he's in this position of power. He can do to them whatever he chooses. And many of us, when you first read, if you don't know what's going to happen, you're just like, oh, he about to give it to him. Like, he gonna take them to prison. He gonna stone them to death, something, right? Like, he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't. He doesn't do any of that because he is merciful. On top of all of this and all his other great characteristics, he is also forgiving and merciful. And we also know someone else forgiving and merciful. That would be God. He wants us to be more like him. He made us in his image. So I think he would love for us to be a little more merciful and show more compassion to others, even when they have done wrong to us. So Joseph is merciful. His brothers come. He sells them grain. He does this little scheme thing where he tries to get his younger... They didn't bring the younger brother or the dad when they came. So he tells them that one of them has to stay there while they go back and get the little brother. And he kind of set it up. He's doing this all intentionally. They leave, they come back with the younger brother, then he keeps the younger brother, and then the dad ends up coming. He's trying to get everybody there together. He reveals himself to them, lets them know who he is. Initially, the brothers are terrified. They're just like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill us. Like, this is it. All of us are going to die because of what we did to Joseph. They still feel guilt over what they did to him. So they're afraid of his wrath as well. But he cries. He cries and hugs them. He gives them all land. He welcomes them with open arms. He's just so overjoyed to see his family. And he forgave them. He didn't even think about it. In fact, I'll give you the exact scripture that he said to them to just further say how amazing Joseph is. So this is Genesis 50:20. Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. And so again, we just see that he's just so in tune and so aligned with God. His relationship with God is just amazing. He's seen that. He understood that God was taking him to a place that he needed to be separate from his brothers so that he could then, in turn, save his brothers when the time came. And not just his brothers. He saved his brothers, but he saved the whole country. Like, everybody is saved because of this one man who endured all this hardship, did nothing to deserve it. It was just his path that God chose for him. And so I feel like all of us are on a journey, right? God created us. If we say we're one of God's children, then we all have a purpose. He put us all here for a purpose, and he's trying to get us all into purpose. And a lot of times it feels hard. It's a struggle. We all know the struggle of God and walking in purpose with God. It's not an easy path. People may make you think that it's an easy path to just walk with God. It seems so cool that, you get messages from God, you speak to God, or God is telling you this and taking you there. But in reality, it's not easy. It's not easy to get messages. It's not easy try to discern what God is saying to you and make sure that you stay with God and that you don't get ahead of God and that you don't misinterpret what he's saying. You have to always ask for clarity. You have to remember to be kind, to be patient, compassionate. These things that we're also, while we're going through all of this, he's positioned. He's trying to change our mind and change our heart while also changing our physical position of where he's trying to get us to. So throughout this process, it's just a lot. And so I picked the song Relate to go with the song Mercy today, just because if we can all see that and all understand that, then we should be able to relate to one another. What it's like, the struggle that we're all going through when we're trying to find purpose. We're trying to be obedient. We're trying to be good children of God. We're trying to do what he asks of us. And I think if we can look at other people and just understand that everybody is going through a similar struggle, and God is like, this is God's struggle. Like, everyone has their own struggle. We're all on our own path. We shouldn't look at other people and judge them for whatever they're going through, because God is trying to work something out of them or build something up in them. Whatever the case may be, if we all know that struggle, then we should show some compassion and patience for other people that are going through their own struggle and give them words of encouragement. Just let them know that good times will come, things will get better. It's not always going to be hard. You know, God will take you down. He'll give you some ups, though. He'll give you some happy, some joy. You know, tears of happiness are along the way. But there are a lot of tears of sadness, tears of pain, tears of just exhaustion. You feel weary. You feel like you just can't take it anymore. You want to give up. You feel lost sometimes. You feel alone at times. And I just want everybody to know we're all in the same, I'm in the same struggle with all of you guys who are trying to find your purpose here on earth, every last one of us. And so next time you go out and you see somebody in a struggle, just whatever comes to heart or mind, say it. And so I kind of just wrote this last little note for myself, but then I'll just share it with you guys. I was like, we need to be more humble, more adaptable, and more merciful toward each other. If all of us are being prepared for our purpose by God, then we should understand that that journey is not easy. Knowing that we should be more compassionate to one another along the way, we can all relate to the struggle of reaching God's purpose. And that is it. So I guess it worked out that the song was a little late today. That was all intentional too, I'm sure. Making sure everybody got here in time to get every bit of the message that needed to be said. Does anybody have anything to add? You want to share your own struggle on this walk to purpose? We're all like in the middle ground, I think, most of us. I know for me, I feel like I'm in the middle. Like, this is all new territory for me. I was just, well, not just, but I'm a nurse. I was working as a nurse. We recently moved to a new location, and I got here, and God is speaking to me on a daily basis. He's been giving me instructions on things to stop doing, things to start doing, things to stop eating, stop drinking. It's been little bits of things just to test my obedience. I don't really question what the whole picture means, because it's just so much every day that I'm just trying to keep up with what he's saying. And then I end up giving a message, and again, not all of you, but if you weren't here for the first message, I have never read the Bible in my life. I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in a household that was not a pleasant place, and we went to church on Easter and Christmas. So I didn't know a lot of this stuff, and 7 years ago, something happened in my life that led me into a deep relationship with God. And so he's been speaking to me for the last 7 years, just words of encouragement, building this trusting relationship. And then in February, he starts asking me to do some different stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's different. But I roll with it, because I'm like, sure, stop drinking. That's not bad. Don't eat bacon anymore. Okay, that's not bad. I love bacon, y'all. But, and then in May, he asked me to read the Bible. So I'm like, cool, I'll read the Bible. I love to read. So I buy the Bible. I start reading it. Get into the book of Genesis, fall in love with Joseph. I write all these notes down, and then not even a week later, Bree makes a speech about taking a sabbatical from the Wright woman, and God is telling me that I'm going to fill in and that I'm going to give this message on Joseph that I'd already written down. I'm just like, oh, okay. So this is all new to me. I feel like I kind of got thrown into it, but I love it. This is my third message. My last message, Bree is coming back. I don't know what God is going to do next. I'll wait. I'm just trying to stay with him, try not to get ahead of him. wherever he wants me to be, whatever he wants me to do. I'll still be here on the Monday meetings to listen to whoever is speaking. If someone else's turn is up next, be ready, because God might start asking other people to speak, share your story, or give you a message about something that you've encountered or read in the Bible that can help other people. But that's my current situation right now. Anybody else? No one? Any good news?
Well, I'm trying not to say nothing. I always say something. It was good. It's just so crazy that the message went with, mercy. Giving mercy is not always easy. And I think when you've been hurt so much, it's really difficult to show mercy, but we always want it. When we do something to someone, we want them to quickly show us mercy. But when you flip it and you do something to someone else, you don't always give that same grace back. And we were dealing with a situation today. Well, I'm a mama cub, my kids are grown, except for, my 13-year-old. And when people come at my children in the wrong way, and I know they're trying to scandalize them in ways I know are not my children, you know what I'm saying? Like, not perfect. None of us are perfect. I know my children are not perfect. But when you know your kids and then you know someone is trying to make them or turn them into something that they're not, or say something about them that I know it's not their character, the mama cub come out, and I had to refrain, because one, it's not my battle, because my kids are grown, they can fight their own battle. But it's like you're doing something that's causing pain to something that I love, and then you expect me not to react. No, that ain't true. I'm gonna curse you out. And I'm not gonna show you mercy. Okay, I'm just not gonna do that, because now you're attacking something that belongs to me. So this is why I don't understand Joseph. Like, I know, I get it. I don't see Joseph for real. You see what they did to you. You all really, and then, but I said this the other week when you were sending the word, Sacha. Like, the great God, it's all Him, because Michelle is gonna curse you out. He says turn, and then the Jesus had to come up, and I had to go, you know what? I'm upset about what happened, but I'm gonna forgive you, because I'm gonna look at you how Jesus looks at you, because we're all grown. We all have things that we need to get rid of. So I can't look at you and go, well, what you did was worse than mine. Now all I did was step on your toe. Well, no. In God's eye, it's all the same sin. It's all the same meanness, or whatever you want to call it. So it's kind of like you really have to seek God for that, because He is the only one that's going to give you that.
I think it cut out a little bit.
I told y'all I'm having difficulties over here, so y'all can't even forgive me. But I'm just saying it's important that we seek God for that, because I think that's, for me, and I can't speak for everybody, one of the hardest things is to show other people mercy sometimes. Especially been hurt. It's difficult, but I have somebody to treat me. He mercy on me every day, because I wake up and He gives me grace. So who am I? This that lives in me, that lives in me. Who am I not to give mercy or grace to somebody else? But it's not easy. I'm working on it, because today I didn't have it. It's not all the way there yet. It's coming. I asked the Lord to forgive me, but at that moment, I didn't want to show no mercy. But progression, not perfection. Progression.
Yes, progression, not perfection. That is correct. We are human. God is perfect. He gives us mercy every day. Every single day He deals with us and our shenanigans, and He gives us mercy. So we can just try to be a little bit closer to Him.
That's so good that you share that, Mom, because I was actually put in my own little situation and that thing that you like, okay, things that you never do would come up, right? Like, you don't get angry at people, like you don't be going off on people and all that kind of stuff. But like you said, then when it comes to your kids, it's a difference when somebody tries to hurt them, so it's like these things that show up in your life that you don't expect to show up in your life, and I think that's why Joseph is even a good example, because at the same time, God had to show Joseph who he was. God already knew who Joseph was. Like, God already knows who we are at the end of the day, but he has to put us in certain situations to see what's in us, because if something is in us and we say, oh, Lord, search my heart, and something is in us, he has to take that out of us. But if he never puts us in a situation so we can see what's in us, we'll never go to him and say, Lord, I don't want this here in my heart. And that's just what I'm dealing with right now, because there's just things going on in my heart. And I'm having conversations at 4 in the morning, like, is something wrong with my heart? Like, I don't understand. Like, you go through all these tests and you go through all these trials and you leap over mountains and sometimes crawl over your mountains and your giants. At the same time, you get to a position and you're still dealing with something. And people just expect you, because you're walking with God, to just, pointing the finger. It's like we go through things. We are human. We are not God at the end of the day. We are human. So it's okay to go through things, even when God places you in that new season, even when God puts you in a new position, even when you're at a situation where everything is going good. That next hour can be a test. But it's up to us to be like Joseph and have faith through everything, to stay positive about everything. Because as soon as we find some negative, here comes the enemy having his chance to creep in. Because we found something that was negative instead of all the positive that God has, allowed in our life. But that's just what I'm going through. So I thank you for sharing just some things that are going on in my heart that if I wasn't in a current situation that I was in, I wouldn't have had a chance to see it. But again, God is taking us somewhere. God is taking the right woman somewhere. God is taking Sacha somewhere, me somewhere, all of us at the end of the day. And even if we don't pass the test, it's okay, because there's always another test, so it's okay.
Yeah, a lot of tests, a life of tests. I don't know. Thank you guys for sharing. Anybody else want to share, vent, open up, or, good, bad, happy, sad? All is welcome here.
Well, good evening, ladies. I'll be brief. I know I'm new here, but I just wanted to say that what resonated with me the most when you were speaking about being in the wilderness, and the only thing that the only thing that you trust is God in that moment and moments in that time, in that season. And I think just for me, that's so purposeful right now, because I'm in situations that I am completely uncomfortable. There's not a comfort level to be spoken on. Everything is uncomfortable. Like, everything about it is uncomfortable. But the only thing I know, the only thing I'm holding on to as I'm in this wilderness, and as you were talking about it, I'm just like, okay, this is such an on-time message, because what is happening in the wilderness is going to produce something on the other end for me and everybody connected to the situation. So right now, I'm just going to say I'm grateful for the wilderness. I'm just going to keep telling myself that. I'm going to keep thanking God for the communion and time with him in the wilderness. And I will continue to pray on finding out what the purpose of this uncomfortable wilderness is. But just as you were speaking, it was like I just kept hearing that word, and I think you only said it a few times, but it's like, okay, right now you don't know. You don't have it figured out. You're not in control, and all you can do is be in the wilderness. And that's what he's asking me to do right now. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to, like you said, don't try to get ahead of him.
Yeah.
Don't try to, get to the next step. Just be in the wilderness. Just be in the wilderness, and when I reveal it to you, you will find out. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate being here tonight, and that was spot on.
Perfect. I love to hear that. So yeah, that's so good. Yeah, the last message was patient endurance. God kind of gave us that we have to patiently endure all the things that he puts us through so that we can get to the other side. So yeah, just stay where you are, keep going. You'll get, there is a bright light at the end of the wilderness. That was good. All right. I loved it. This morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was loving all of this. I was like, oh, okay, I got it. God, I need to be more adaptable and more humble and just more everything like Joseph. In this season of my life, that's what he's asking me, is to just be more like Joseph so that he can position me in my heart, in my mind, and physically where he needs me to be. And so whether I got to cry through it, laugh through it, however I got to get to the other side, I'm going to the other side. So anybody else want to share? I didn't see. Let's see. I see a lot of messages in the chat.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's some messages going up in the chat. So.
Let me see.
No, I wanted to share this real quick with you guys. And Ronnie made up that, and I know Mommy said it as well, about not going ahead of God. And I was telling Sacha, I was telling her this dream. My son ended up having a dream about me, and we were driving in the car, and then Cross was in back of us, and Cross, let me tell the story. I'm sorry.
Marcus said, let me tell the story.
Drive in the car, and then Cross was in the back trying to tell the story. Cross was in the back, so when God gives me a dream, like Cross is like acts, and Cross is my dog, he acts as if like the Cross is with me. So when I'm carrying Cross in a dream, I know that God is with me because of his name. So he just tries to, whatever. So we was going far or fast, if you will, and Cross was behind me. So it was as if I'm leaving the Cross, like I'm getting too far ahead from the Cross, like I'm going too fast for the Cross. And that's how I took it as revelation. Like sometimes we do just got to slow down and be here. Just be. And I know Ronnie, when we was talking about that yesterday, and she was talking to me about that, about just being, it was absolutely correct. Like we just have to just be. And even for me, I get too far ahead too. Just because you know the word, or just because you go to church, or just because you're praying, or just because you're speaking in tongues, and all of these things that may seem good or great or whatever the case is you can still get far ahead. And y'all know I'm transparent and authentic. I'm clearly getting too far ahead of myself, being excited, saying things I shouldn't say, doing things like, we gotta just pull back sometimes, and it's okay to admit it, because that's what they say in counseling. First step is admitment. So it's okay to admit some things that is just going on in your heart, because from that, somebody else, if not just yourself, gets helped and gets saved and all of those things. So let's not just get ahead of ourselves and leave the cross. Let's stay with the cross. Let's walk with the cross. Let's be side to side with the cross. Don't get too far ahead, because you'll miss something probably, and he wanted you to slow down the whole time. So go ahead, Sash.
Yeah, no, girl, I was listening. That's so good. Yeah, he's been using my husband recently to remind me to not get too far ahead, because I do the same. Like, he's speaking to me, he's giving me all these things, and sometimes I get nervous, I guess, or it can be a little scary because this is all new to me, and I'm like, okay, you asked me to do all this stuff, you got me giving messages, and I'm just like, where are you going with this? Like, what is happening? I just read Genesis, so of course I've and I read through Moses, so I heard about the Moses and the Noah and like Abraham and these sorts of people that he's speaking to and having them do all these things, and I'm just like, where are you taking me? What's gonna happen? Like, I want to know. Like, can you give me more? Tell me a little bit more of the future so I can prepare for it. And I'm a planner. Anybody who don't know that, I like to plan like 10 years in the future. So he's reminding me that I can't plan this. This is his plan. He's told me that a few times now. It's his plan, and I'm just along for the ride. So my husband the other day, I was like trying to speculate. I was like, I wonder, like, what if you do this? And I'm kind of nervous, and he just like, you way too far ahead. And I was just, oh yeah, you're right, my bad. Thank you for reining me back in. So yes, God will send people, dreams, or people to remind you to stay in your place and just walk with Him. Walk with Him. We need to be with Him at all times.
Yeah, stay in your lane. I need to stay in my lane.
Yeah, that was so good. I can't wait. I don't know. I'm very curious. So there was 3 parts to this message, and I shared that from the very beginning that I had 3 messages to give, and Bree is coming back on, and I know me and Bree have spoken before about maybe there will be something later on where I'll be giving a message and she'll give a message the next Monday. I don't know what's to come because I can't get ahead of him, so you guys will know when I guess we know, when me and Bree get that clarification or confirmation if there's another message. She hasn't given me another message, so I'll see what comes after this. The next book of the Bible he has me read, maybe there's going to be a message from that. So I'm open. At this point, I'm just open to whatever he asks me to do, I will do. I'm less nervous now. Thank you all for being here these last few messages with me. It has been different. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a group speaker. I'm definitely a behind-the-scenes kind of girl. It's been fun.
Well, we've enjoyed you. I've enjoyed you. You know, I couldn't wait for you to start preaching on Joseph. I mean, you can always go a little deeper because there's so much in that story. There's so many depths to just who he was, and then the role the father played, the role the brothers played. You know, their brothers was manipulative. They were just because people in my family was like that. He's like, "Oh Jesus, get him, Lord, get him." But it's just so many depths to that story. Just the fact that he was even in how he even made it into Pharaoh's kingdom, and just the grace and the favor that he was given, even though he was nothing like that. He wasn't born in that richness. You know, so it's crazy. It's so many depths to that story, but it was really good. So I appreciate you sharing it because that's probably one of my favorite stories out of many, but definitely one of my favorites. So I was excited when you were going to talk about that whole story. But see, that's what happens when you have favorites of your kids. This is why you can't have favorites. See, Joseph Daddy was wrong because he should have favorites, and they would have made it feel like that. So I blame on the daddy. So that's just me because he shouldn't have favorites.
Thank you, Ronnie, for joining. Hopefully we see you next time. I see you right. Good night. Anybody who has to leave, good night. Anybody who's still staying on, we can keep chit-chatting. But yeah, I agree. I love Joseph's story. He's just a human, right? And that's the part that we love. We talk about Jesus, but Jesus was Jesus. So, of course, we expect that from Jesus. But a regular person like Joseph went through all those things. He was tempted and put in situations that just looked awful. And he still ended up. He stayed the same. He was true to himself the whole time. And I love that. He never changed his personality. He was always humble. He was always selfless. He was always patient. He was always kind. He just became more humble, more selfless, more patient, more kind as he went through the situations that God took him through. And I'm just like, man, to go through that and gain all those things is difficult. For most of us, we would lose all of that and it would turn into the opposite. We would become impatient, mean, I mean, you name it. And yeah.
It was a good word, Sacha. You did good.
Thank you.
Amen. All right, ladies, I gotta go.
Oh yes.
Good
night.
All right. Bye.
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 I know it's 8:41. I guess. Well, we're not too late considering we had technical difficulties. But like I said, I think that was intentional. Everybody who was on tonight needed to hear the whole word, so the songs got pushed back to make sure that everybody had time to get on a little late. Good night, Dora. But yeah.
Dora. good night.
I know. And then there were 4.
There you go. I was talking earlier.
Oh.
Earlier.
Oh, let me turn off this camera.